morning, everyone. For those that don't know me, Lara Collins Tokuingoa, CEO Waka Ama New Zealand. I'm just going to hand over to Amelia, and she's going to start us off with a karakia and give us some a little bit of housekeeping to get us going.
Kia ora tātou, ko haramai ki tēnei pō, nau mai haramai ki tēnei zui. Ai ka karakia hau ina nei, minoi tātou, manoa mai te mauri nuku, manoa mai te mauri rangi, ko te mauri ki au, he mauri tipua. Ko pakaru mai te pō, tau mai te mauri, haumie, huie, tā ki e. Kia ora everybody. My name's Amelia Mitter. I work for Waka Ama New Zealand in the events and development and everything else space. It's nice to see some familiar faces on here tonight. Thanks for joining us. I want to send me tuku aroha ki our tāmaki whānau and everybody around the motu. I know it's been a tough time. So just a few housekeeping from us. So we would prefer if everybody could stay on mute for the duration of while we're speaking during this Zoom. We are gonna, I'll put it in an agenda in the chat box, just so you guys know the areas that we're gonna cover tonight. Throughout the Zoom, if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat box. I'll keep an eye on that, and I'll let Lara know if any questions are popping up. And if you have a question that you would like to kōrero to, if you could just raise your hand. Along the bottom of the screen, you should be able to see reactions, and there's a function for you to raise your hand, so I can keep an eye on that, and we'll try to cover as many questions as we can. Yeah, tonight's just about sharing all the information that we have and trying to answer any questions that are out there. Lara's just doing some examples of reactions, so all the hearts will be good to come this way. Right, so ngā mihi nui kia tātou, I'll whiua the rākau back to Lara.
Yeah, thanks, kia ora Amelia, thank you. There's a few more people, we're just going to let them in. And yeah, so thanks everybody for joining. It's quite a popular little Zoom. As Amelia said, she's going to put a bit of an agenda in the chat function, so to remind us really what we're talking about as well. And we are happy for you to interact, and we're happy to take some voice questions, because it'll be pretty just listening to ourselves. So it's yeah, there's a lot to sort of cover, and we want to make sure that we give enough time to answer the questions that you guys have, because that's probably the most important thing. So we'll just go through each of the items, and if you have questions as we go, please just let us know. Probably best to do it that way rather than save everything till the end. So just starting off, I guess the purpose of this hui tonight is we've got the World Sprints coming up in London next year. Everybody knows that COVID is pain in the butt, and we're all experiencing all of the challenges that COVID throw at us, and there's a lot of uncertainty. We've put out the information online about the intent process. So this hui tonight is about the World Club Championship. We'll touch a little bit at the end about the elite stuff, just to give you an update of where we're at with that. But we want to make sure that we've put information online, and we've got a date for clubs to submit intents by. But we know that in order to submit an intent, you need to have as much information as possible to know if it's possible for you to go to London. So I guess providing you with that information will be helpful for you to be able to submit an intent going into it with your eyes kind of wide open. There's a worst case scenario, we get heaps of intents get put in without people actually intending to go. So that's pretty much why we're here. And if after tonight you have more questions, or you didn't want to ask anything, just feel free to get in touch with us at any time afterwards. We're happy to answer your questions. So the intent process that we put up online, it's pretty much the same as what has been there what has been the intent process for the last 2 World Sprint Championships. So utilising nationals as the qualifier for the World Club Championships. Clubs put in an intent for each team that they want to trial, I guess is the word. And then if at the date when the intents close, if there are more than 6 teams with an intent in a category, then that means that there has to be a trial at nationals. If there are 6 or less, that means that those teams automatically will qualify to go to the World Sprint Championships. This year, in previous years, we've used a paper form where you know, you fill out the form, have it signed by the club, scan it, send it back. Where this time around we're using the club online entry system just to save everybody a little bit of paperwork, to try to alleviate some of that, both at your end and at our end. And yeah, so the close off date is the 13th of December, and we'll send out a few reminders before then, and you'll be able to see the entries online, who has put in an intent. So pretty much as soon as we put it out there, we already had, I think there was 7, was it 7 intents from Ngā Hoi Horo?
Yes, quick off the mark, those ones.
Quick off the mark, yeah. First one off the rank. So so you'll be able to see those online, and if you can't find that link, it's in the calendar, just like an event would be, and you can look at the online entries, so you can see who else has put in an intent, and if it's looking like there's going to be 6 or less or more, you'll be able to see that as we get closer to the date. We do require the intent fee for the intent to be valid, and we've given I think the date is the 15th of December for the intent fees to come in. If after the 15th of December we haven't received the intent fee, then we will remove that team. And the purpose of the intent fee, it basically is the entry fee to the World Sprints. That money will then, I mean, we collect the money, we then pay the money to the International Bar Federation. If, just like in the past, if there are more than 6 teams and you have to qualify to go and you don't achieve that qualification, you will get a refund of your entry fee. I've already had a question, well, why do we need to pay the money? It's really you know, 1, it's the entry fee, and 2, it's a commitment. And, you know, if you're struggling to get that commitment for $180 from an individual at less than a year out from going to London, it's going to be difficult to get the rest of the money that person needs to pay to get to London. So it kind of starts the ball rolling with the whole financial commitment for everybody all around. I think that's like overview of the intent process, but for some people it might be newer than others. Some will have done it for the last 2 World Sprints. Are there any questions about the intent process?
Don't be too shy to.
Come on, there must be one. None? Okay. No questions. Sweet. We'll just keep rolling on. So that then leads on to qualifying. I've kind of touched on it. Nationals is where we do the qualifying. So basically at the moment we've only talked about W6s, and we'll touch on W1s next. But plan A is that just as in the past, if there are more than 6 teams that put in an intent, then all of those teams will be competing at nationals. The first 6 teams with an intent in a category would qualify to the World Club Sprint Championships. The $40 million question is Nationals happening? Plan A is that Nationals is happening. But as you all know, there's a little bit of uncertainty around what's happening with regard to COVID and what's possible and how the traffic light system works and what about vaccine passports and all of those things. And that has been our life on a daily basis of late. And we are constantly meeting with Sport New Zealand and other sports who are all dealing with the same issues and getting advice from government. So we don't have any answer for you tonight on whether Nationals is happening or not happening. We've given an indication that we would have a decision by the 13th of December whether Nationals will go ahead or not. You know, we are still pushing on organising Nationals and hoping that that is plan A. Should Nationals not be able to go ahead at its current form at Lake Karapiro in January, our plan B is that we will organise a qualifying event at a later date, most likely to be, at this stage, most likely to be in March. And that would be a qualifying event only for those categories that require qualification. Any questions about that?
We've had a couple of questions in the chat, not specific to qualifying. First question was from Chev. How many peddlers can we swap out of a team from Nats to Worlds if needed?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Amelia, but you can swap out all of the peddlers. It's the important thing to remember is that it's the club that qualifies the team, not the peddlers in it. So the club is qualifying the team at Nationals or the qualifying event, and the club could change all of those peddlers if it wanted to. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
That's correct. Awesome.
Good answer. There's one more question from Greg. Kia ora, is the fee payable per event just for a team that may enter multiple events?
It's just a one-off fee of $1,080, and it's that team could enter the turn race, the straight race, and the W12. Yep. So it's not by race, it's just by a one-off team, and it covers all of the races that they can enter.
Yeah, it ends up being like a per paddler fee. So once you've paid that fee, you're covered for every event that you're racing in. Well, the questions are coming through hot now. Where will the March trials be held?
Plan B point A would be that if it's in March, it'll be at Karapiro. It's our preference to use the lanes that we have at Karapiro and the course, because it's probably the fairest and most what's the word, professional race course that we have.
World class,
that's the word, course that we have in Aotearoa. So if we're going with March and that a March date, then it will be at Karapiro.
There's another question from Linda. Is there a possible date in March?
We're just working through that at the moment with the availability of Karapiro and the potential of piggybacking on with another event that's happening. It also depends on a little bit on how many teams we need to have a qualifying event for. So if there are lots and lots of teams, we might be looking at a 2 or 3 day event. If there are not, it could possibly be done in 1 day. So we're just looking at what are the options. As soon as we have that availability, we'll let you guys know.
Questions from Kiwi. If Plan A is canned, will the World's race rules apply to the qualifying event in March?
Kiwi, do you want to elaborate on your, I don't know what you mean by the world's race rules.
Oh, kia ora, whānau, can you guys hear me?
Yep. Sure can.
Yeah, that's fine. So what I'm referring to there is when we're at Worlds, we're able to move up and down grades. So, for example, I could race in the Opens, but I could also race in the Masters. Can we apply those rules into the qualifying event that we're going to have in March if Nationals doesn't go ahead?
That is a really good question. It's a good one. Is it okay if I don't give you an answer right now, but we come back to this, to everybody that attended tonight with an answer? I just don't want to make sure I give you the wrong answer, but it's a very good question and I understand exactly what you're saying.
Take that as a yes. Thanks, Kiwi. That was a good question. And we'll, share that information. Question from Shiv: if there's no qualifying due to only quota being entered for Worlds, is there seeding for lanes?
It's another good question. I'm just trying to think back in my brain powers what we've done in the past on that. Oh my God.
Hey, just in the past, I don't think the same.
Sorry.
I don't think we've been rigged. Like club teams coming through, but there was no advantage of coming through first when we were at qualifying events.
Yeah, Kiwi's right. When you get to Worlds, the lanes aren't seeded. Is that correct?
No, the lanes aren't seeded. The W1s are seeded, but it's just like Nationals. It's random lane draw, just like Nationals, so it doesn't matter. Thanks, Kiwi.
Thanks, Shiv. Great question. Oh, Jingos. From Hakupa. Kia ora Hakupa. Will secondary nationals still go ahead in March as well? Has there been any thought towards this impact on school teams and club teams' training schedules clashing?
Secondary school nationals is going ahead in March. Obviously, Plan A. That's we're working with the what do they call themselves? New Zealand Secondary School New Zealand, or whatever that organisation is. We're working with them. They're developing some rules around vaccinations and how that works with secondary schools. Obviously, it's a bit of a moving feast at the moment, but that is scheduled for the last week of March, early April, and we wouldn't make the qualifying event clash with that event at all. So because we all have to be at that as well. So yeah.
Cool. A question from April: for March event, will only the teams that submitted an intent and paid will be the only teams to compete at this March event? Correct.
The intents need to be in 13th of December. If at the 13th of December there's 6 or less, then those are the teams that are going. If you decide in January, oh, we're keen to go now, and we've already told 6 teams that they're already going to London, you're too late.
Cool.
And part of the reason for that is the intent process that we have to work with at the International Federation.
Cool. I can't see any more questions coming through. Next item.
Cool. Next item is the W1 process. So W1s typically are done just through entries for nationals, and anybody can qualify. They don't need to put in an intent for W1s. And a lot of the regional events are happening over the next, well, starting in the next couple of weeks and over through in December and some in January in Auckland. So for W1s, it would be, there's a quota, and there's a link to that quota on our website for the international quota.
I'll put it in the chat function for you guys.
Amelia will put it in the chat function, and whatever the quota is for that age group category, we fill that at the nationals. If it's three paddlers, the first three at the nationals get the opportunity to take up that spot. If somebody doesn't want to take the spot, it goes to the next one and the next one and the next one until we fill the spot. There is if nationals doesn't go ahead, we are just working through what process we might look at for the W1s. We haven't confirmed it yet because we just want to make sure we make it fair for everybody. But it might be that we include a W1 component at that qualifying event in March. And just to reiterate, March is a plan A date. If we can't get a date in March, we'll be looking at another date. So just to put it on the record. Any questions about the W1s?
This is not about W1s, but Walton just asked, is it 6 teams across all grades for London?
6 W6 teams, 3 W12 teams.
Per division, and then the W1s is a quota on itself based on the previous World's results, which you can find on the link that I just shared.
Yep. So the quota hasn't changed from previous years.
Alara,
Yes.
just a question about the W1. So are you saying you're not sure if the regional qualifiers will have an impact if the Nats is cancelled on who can go to the qualifiers for W1s?
I think what we're just trying to establish is a bit more data, I guess. So at the moment, all of the regionals are planning to go ahead. There is, a outside chance that one of the regionals might not be able to go ahead because of COVID, and so we have to factor that into our decision making of what happens if one of the regionals can't actually happen. And so that's why we're just trying to work through what are some of the options and what's the best option. And I guess once that decision making looks a bit different once all the regionals have happened and we've got all of that information, then we know what the regional results were. But if for example, the Auckland City Council has said to Araka, they're not going to allow any events this side of Christmas. So at the moment, Araka have their regionals scheduled for the week before nationals. If something happens with COVID and they don't get to have that, then what does that mean for those paddlers? So we're just working through all of that kind of stuff at the moment. It's all awesome.
There was a question from Selena, but I think you just answered it. If you had to run a separate W1 qualifier, would it be based on W1 entries based on regionals?
Well, that's one option, yes. So, everybody knows at the moment that if they want to qualify to the Worlds in a W1, they need to go to their regionals. So, that's been made very clear. So we have an indication of those paddlers who are wanting to go to Worlds by the number of people who are trialling at their regionals, and that would allow us to be able to go down that path if we needed to. And we haven't ruled out having a completely separate W1 qualifier. We just want to make sure we cover all the options and are fair for everybody.
Any more partai?
Any questions about that? No, okay. So the next thing we had on here was travel and accommodation. I guess, and just generally logistics. So I'm not sure if any of you have seen the pānui that came out from the IVF. And there's some travel advisory in there, and it's also available on the IVF website.
The link.
The advice given is that you shouldn't, well, they're advising to not book accommodation or airfares unless it's flexible or you can change it, or until the schedule for the World Sprint Championships has been confirmed. And so when we talk about, you know, things being challenging here in Aotearoa, it's the same all around the world, and all of the countries are dealing with similar issues about how many people they can send, who can go, how they're going to travel, all of those sort of things. And so the event is likely, very likely, to go ahead, and the hosts are organising it and are pretty certain that the event is going ahead. There are lots of countries who are unsure as to whether they're going to be able to get to London and participate. And so at the last World Sprints, the competition, it was 8 days of competition. I think it was 8 for 7 days of competition, 7 or 8, I can't remember. There's 2 elite days, there was 2 elite days, and then 5 or 6 club championship days. That was with 2,100 participants from 32 countries. You can imagine if the entries are much less, and there are half the number of countries and half the number of entries, then the event might not be 7 or 8 days long. It might only be 3 or 4 days long. And so one of the reasons for advising people to not book their stuff until the event entries close, at least, is to be able to make sure that you're not going to book a 2-week trip when it only needs to be a 10-day trip or a 1-week trip, or, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So that's the things that are a little bit up in the air with the length of the event. And so that would be our advice as well. So if on the 13th of December, you're in the Master 70s Women's team, and there's 6 teams that have put in an intent, and we say, congratulations, you're going to the World Sprints, it would be our advice to just hold off on booking anything until we can confirm to you what the schedule is. Any questions around that?
Any questions?
It says 5 new messages. Are they old ones? No, old ones. Cool. Well, that was pretty clear. Just in terms of just general travel, we've so last time for the Hilo event that didn't happen, we had a relationship with a travel agent that we did bookings for the elite teams with. We also used the same travel agent when we went to Tahiti, and we've asked for some quotes for travel for the elite teams, and we've also asked them for some quotes and some accommodation options which we could share with you guys. You may have your own travel agents and avenues for travel, and that's all good. That's not a problem. You're welcome to do whatever works for you. We just thought we'd help in some way by giving you an option. We won't be the middle person. Like, we will just put the information out there on the website or in an email to people, and you guys can contact them directly, because we don't have the resources to manage everybody's travel requirements. But that information, the travel is a bit of a moving feast, and there's a huge range of flight costs that I've seen so far, and I think that even over the next 2 or 3 months that might change. So yeah, that's something that we'll provide you with some more information on. accommodation, the nearest town really is Windsor. I think the castle's already booked, but there may be some other accommodation in Windsor that is available. The event venue is actually only about 20 minutes or 15 minutes from Heathrow Airport, so it's pretty handy, and there's a lot of accommodation around Heathrow. Windsor is quite a big little town. There is accommodation there. I know we've asked some local paddlers in London if they can come back to us with some options that are less hotel-y and more communal, I guess, if there are any sort of camp areas or accommodation that might be dormitory sort of style that might be a little bit cheaper, might suit larger groups staying in them. So whatever information we get, we'll just share that with you, and we're in constant communication with the event organizers. So their website is going to be up and running, I hope, in the next few weeks. They've got a placeholder on their website at the moment, and you can sign up for their newsletter, and they are going to be having some information on their website about accommodation options. So I guess stay tuned a little bit for that. Is there any other questions about travel and accommodation?
Nothing in the chat. Oh. Nope.
Nope. Cool. Events specific. What's that one, Amelia?
Now that you say it, I'm not quite sure, but
awesome.
Maybe how the event runs, like we start with the elites. Well,
yeah.
In previous years.
So for those people who've not been to a World Championship before, yeah, there are the start of the week is normally the elite days. That includes the para racing, and then the W1 stuff. They are spaced out throughout the week amongst the World Club Championship events. And this year there is some information coming out to Waka Ama clubs very shortly, but you may have already seen it online actually. But there is two new event categories that are going to be at the event next year. So that is the Master 75 age category and the Master 80 age category. And those age categories are open to W1s, W6 and W12. And so it will go 40, 50, 60, 70, 75, 80. And so you may have some 80 or 75 plus paddlers or some 80 plus paddlers in your club that are interested in going, or maybe not this time around, but those event categories will be introduced for the first time in London. There's a new question.
Just Marina just said maybe briefings for team managers and coaches from when they arrive and throughout the event.
Yeah. So typically when we travel as a New Zealand contingent, what we've done, what's worked really well in the past, and thanks Marina for that information. And Marina, if you don't know, has been part of our area coordination team and the area coordinator for ever since 2006, I believe. And so at the World Sprints in Tahiti, we asked each club to designate one or two, or depending on how big their club contingent was, up to 3 people who basically managed their club, so that we could have a daily briefing with the club representatives rather than having one person from every team. There were quite a lot of people, so it was designated to a club to each club to then disseminate that information throughout their club contingent at the event. And so that's something that we would continue with. And from basically from the 13th of December, there'll be pānui that come out for those teams that are already qualified because their event category doesn't need to qualify. There will be pānui that comes out and information for them. And then as teams qualify, then there'll be information. There are timelines that need to be met in terms of once you qualify, whether that's at nationals or at a later qualifying event, there'll be timelines that need to be met in terms of when you have to submit the names of all of the people in your teams, their passports, their all of their information needs to be submitted so that we can submit it online. We also will, for this event, require, not sure how to collect it yet, but the event has told everybody that the event hosts have told everybody that you will be required to be fully vaccinated to attend the event. So putting it out there, in order for people to go to the venue, you'll need to be vaccinated. And I would say that will be collected at a country level and then passed on to the event organisers in some way, yet to be determined. And that brings us to the vaccine part of the agenda, which is, yeah, pretty much that's the information we have. In order to go to the event, you'll need to be vaccinated, and that will include the paddlers, the coaches, the supporters, anybody on site at the venue. They did have a test event last month at the venue, and they also, for that event, they required a negative test as well. They haven't indicated whether they're going to require that at the stage, but if that information comes out, we would pass that on to everybody.
Marianne just has a question, says fax, but I think she means fax. Fax extends to all persons, traveller, whether or not paddlers.
It would extend to all people on site at the venue, yes.
Yes, sorry, you were talking when I was typing that, my bad.
Marina, sorry, Marina.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, and not all airlines yet, but I know Air New Zealand has already said that in order to travel internationally, you'll need it to be vaccinated. And I believe there's a couple of airlines that have already come out and said that. So that's probably the first point to be vaccinated will actually just be to leave New Zealand, possibly. Selena, question.
I can read it out. If you put your intent in and qualify at Nats, or if there are less than 6 in your category, then you decide you cannot go, do you get a refund? And is there a date by when to accept?
Yes and no. So there is a timeline, which I'm just trying and open so I can give you the information. Once we've submitted the entries and we've paid the entry fee, like the requirement for us to pay the entry fee to the International Federation, then at that point we can't give you a refund because we wouldn't get a refund. So without scrolling through all of the information, we can provide you with that after this hui, with when that date would be. But basically, once you commit to go, and at that point, we wouldn't be able to give a refund.
Oh, that was clear. Yep, thanks, Lara.
All good. That's a good question, Agnes. Those that had their vax 6 months ago have to get a booster shot before they can get their COVID. Well, Yeah, I don't know the answer. So as far as my understanding is, you can get your COVID passport without getting the booster shot currently. And I don't know how they're going to capture the booster on the passport, but I believe there will be a way. And the definition of fully vaccinated, I guess, is what the question really is, because for the hosts have said you need to be fully vaccinated. By the time we get there in August next year, that might mean 2 jabs plus 2 boosters, or I don't know. Nobody knows the answer really. So I guess we just have to keep up with what the requirements are, and then keep passing that information on to you guys as to what determines whether we're fully vaccinated by the UK's laws. So it won't be what New Zealand government says. It'll be what the UK government requires for an event to happen. We are quite fortunate in that the Commonwealth Games are being held in, I want to say Newcastle. I think it's Newcastle in England next year in July. And so that is quite a big event, world event, with lots of New Zealanders going to that. And we have a relationship with the New Zealand Olympic Committee, where we can, be sort of tapping into what they're doing, and whether we can sort of jump on the back of some of the things that they're doing and the information that they have that might be able to help us out for our event.
Birmingham, that's where the Commonwealth Games are.
Birmingham, it's not quite Newcastle, but yeah, I think it's north, right? Yep. Cool.
Any more partai regarding that out there? You can always send us an email afterwards if you don't want to ask tonight.
Yeah, the next question is around, the next item we had was around MIQ, and that is changing, hopefully for the good for all of us. So as you would know, previously, when we put the intent process out there, MIQ was 14 days in a hotel. That's now been reduced to 7. It is a significant cost, and something that would need to be factored in. The government has indicated that from the first quarter next year, so any time between January and April, they are looking to change the MIQ system again, to look something like New Zealand citizens who are fully vaccinated, allowing them to isolate at home for a period of time when you come home. Still yet to be determined what that looks like, or when it will get rolled out. But fingers crossed that that is what happens, because that will drastically reduce the cost for people. My biggest concern was that if MIQ stayed even in its current form with 7 days, and you were a club wanting to take J16 teams to World Sprints, how you would manage J16 paddlers staying by themselves in MIQ for a week or 2 weeks coming home was probably quite a big health and safety issue that would need to be worked through for those people who are looking after other people's children. So that's just something that just to keep in mind. The government hasn't definitively changed MIQ. They've just indicated that they're going to. So we just hope that they do. But do just keep in the back of your mind that in case they don't, there needs to be a plan for MIQ and what that looks like for you guys organising your travel and coming home.
There's a couple of messages, I'm not sure if they're questions. J16 parents can meet their children in MIQ and stay with them. That's from April.
Perfect. That's a great answer. Have a
holiday. Oh, April works with MIQ facilities.
Oh, April.
Who
our
knows?
best friend.
We also just had a power cut here in Tūranga, so I think everybody from Tūranga fell off and they're all slowly coming back in the Zoom.
Oh, sweet. Oh, that's cool. April, if you don't mind, we might ask you some questions offline as we get our way through it. But yeah, that's good to know.
Is there any more questions around that?
Will they change spaces?
Hello.
Hello, Linda. Well, I'm not sure what your question means.
Oh no, this is
Oh,
Jackie.
Jackie.
Jackie, yeah.
Hi,
Look,
Jackie.
hi. Sorry, I came in late. I'm just catching myself up. But on this MIQ, do we not have a concern that if it stays the same, that we're influxing MIQ with hundreds of people looking for a position and that they may not get? That's my worry. You know, we may send over 300 or 400 paddlers, maybe. I don't know how many we'll send over, but they're all going to come back at relatively the same time looking for our space.
Yeah, that is a genuine
It's a real concern.
Yes, it's a genuine concern, and I would say it would have a big impact on people's ability to actually be able to go. And I guess one of the reasons for having this call tonight is to share that information and for people to go into this process with eyes wide open. Waka Ama New Zealand isn't in a position to organise your MIQ for you. So should and so I'm just in general for everybody. So should MIQ be required, then it is up to each team, person, individual to organise that travel, that MIQ. And I would suggest that it would be what's the word? Well, not advisable or almost irresponsible to book travel and not have an MIQ if the current process is still in place, to book travel and not have the return MIQ already in place. You shouldn't go to London, the other side of the world, and not know that you can get home. It's not good practice, and so that MIQ process would need to be done really before you left here. And we all know that it's been a challenge for a lot of people, and lots of athletes and sports people of all sorts of teams that have a much higher profile than us haven't been able to get MIQ spots. That's the current situation, and it needs to be factored into your thinking. We are in communication constantly with the government and Sport New Zealand, and like I said, what we've been told is that that's going to change in the first quarter. We just don't have a guarantee on it yet. But it's a very valid thing that you say, Jackie, for sure.
Yeah, there's a few kind of questions in the chat function, mainly around MIQ and booking. Obviously, if it changes, we don't know if the booking system will also change as well. So I guess we'll have to come back to you guys with some more information around that.
Yeah, there definitely need to be more information, and that's just also another reason to, don't book your travel or accommodation on the 14th of December once you get confirmed that your team's qualified. It's really, really good to wait until I think the entries close for the IVF in February. So, it won't be until a date in February that we actually know how many countries are participating and what the numbers of entries will look like. And so, holding off on making those bookings would be strongly advised. And James said, it's not just about booking, but there will also be a cost. Yes, there was a cost for MIQ. Was it 3,800 or something, April? A room, I believe, for for 2 weeks. I guess that's been reduced for 7 days. I'm not sure. Yes, thanks, April. I'm not sure if, I guess one of the things that the government possibly has to work through is if New Zealanders can isolate at home when next year, if that comes into effect, how does that work when you have to travel domestically? So if you all fly into Auckland, how do you get to where your home is to isolate? I guess that has to be factored into all of the planning, and that's what they're kind of working through the system. Linda, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, hand up, Linda.
Kia ora, sorry, because I do a little bit of sniffing around in the MIQ, and currently it's you can only book like 3 or 4 months out for your spot. So if we are booking to confirm to go, and then we can't get a spot because you can only do that 3 months out, it's a little bit difficult at the moment. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes 100% sense. It's really challenging. Really challenging for it. The whole current MIQ thing is difficult. You know, it's really our major concern is that if MIQ stays in its current form and it didn't change at all, the number of paddlers that would be able to go from Aotearoa would be reduced significantly.
But with the changes in MIQ and with more people being able to go home earlier, we're hoping that maybe potentially more spots will be open. So I guess as soon as they provide more information around that,
yeah,
we'll pass it on to everybody.
And we just continue to shake the tree where we can. And the question around, you know, if we can't go because we can't get MIQ and it's April, I think what we need to do is go back to the International Va'a Federation and let them know what our circumstances are in terms of what this is the timeline that they have in terms of us paying entry fees, but this is what's happening in our country. And so we will do that on behalf of Waka Ama New Zealand to go back to them just to say, look, we can't pay the entry fee until this date because we won't know until this date whether everybody can go. So, you know, we don't want to take all of your money and give it all over and then not be able to give you a refund. Our intention is, you know, we're not just trying to collect the money to pass it on. So, and I know that the IVF are wanting to try to work with countries as much as possible to make this work for everybody because it's a challenging time. So we will we'll work with them and come up with what the timeline that might work best for New Zealand, and then let you guys know what that is so that we can try and make it work for everybody.
April has just posted up the new costs for the reduced MIQ. Thanks, April. That's really handy information.
Awesome. So awesome. Thanks, April. Yeah, we might put that information into a bit of a pānui for everybody, just around all of the MIQ in one place so that you've got it all in one place and we can share that with everybody. Cool.
Is there any more questions about MIQ?
Great. Next is, I'm working my way back up to the MIQ. We've got worst case scenarios. I think we might have covered some of the worst case scenarios already. Linda, you still got your hand up? Or are you good?
No. Oh.
Oh, she's good. Yeah, worst case scenarios are that, well, the worst case scenario is that well, it'll be because of COVID, the World Sprints gets cancelled. And that happened with the Hilo event. And I think you'll recall when that happened with Hilo, we were able to refund everybody their money, so that wasn't an issue. That's probably the worst case scenario. We've got some people joining back in. Are there any questions about anything we've said, or burning questions? I was just going to touch briefly on where we're at in terms of the elite stuff, just so you all know. You may have seen online the panui about Kiwi and Cece being the coach and assistant coach for the women and J19 women, and so that information is there online, plus the intent forms for that selection process for the women and J19 women. Also, Paddy Rimini is the coach for the J19 men, and the intents are online for that process. We have an application process underway at the moment for the elite men's coach and the para coach. So we are currently seeking applications for people who are interested to be the coaches of those two teams. And Waka Ama New Zealand has made the decision that we are going to run the course of the elite selections regardless of if the World Sprints gets cancelled, or if for some reason the teams can't go. So we are going to appoint coaches, select teams, regardless of whether those teams actually get to go to London or not. And that is, first and foremost, it's about acknowledging that there is mana in being selected in a New Zealand team. And it also allows us to be able to be a little bit nimble in terms of what we do next. So if in April or May the World Sprints got cancelled, we've already will have selected or nearly selected our teams to go. By that point, things might be dire in Europe, but we might be able to do something with Australia or the Pacific Islands. And so being able to have those teams already selected means that we can sort of change tack and do something else. And so without trying to, without losing another year of development and I guess elite development within our sport, we want to continue with that pathway regardless.
There's just a question from Jackie about the Araka Regionals. We're just working with the Araka committee. We've just received some information from them today, so that information should go up in the next couple of days. Any other partai about the elites or?
Thanks, Agnes.
Any other questions in general?
None.
No?
No questions, Shiv. Dan here. Ministry of Health relocates, charters flights to relocate overseas travellers to MIQ near their homes. Oh, hopefully they continue to do that if the borders open up a bit more. That'll be great. Thanks, Maddie. Dan. Yeah, I guess there's lots of information and you might have lots more questions, and I know that we know that people are really interested and keen to get to London. It will be an awesome event. We're not trying to put anybody off from going, that's for sure. We just certainly want people to go into it with their eyes wide open, especially if you're looking after junior teams, and how those teams are managed, and making sure that they can get home is is really, really important to us. Do you need volunteers for the Worlds? Are you putting your hand up, Agnes?
We're digressing here in the chat a little bit.
Yeah, they will require volunteers for the Worlds. So we'll in our liaising with the hosts, we will let you guys know. I know that the last couple of World Sprints, there's been a handful of people, if not more, who've actually volunteered and really enjoyed their experience and meeting some of the other volunteers from around the world. It's a great opportunity. So yes, there will be opportunities to volunteer at the Worlds if you're keen. It's a great experience. Question about Commonwealth Games and Olympic Games. We might need a whole nother Zoom for that one, but just in short, the International Wa'a Federation has undertaken to do some work to identify what the pathway is to Olympics for the sport. There is currently some changes taking place within the Commonwealth Games movement, and it looks like there are other sports that the Commonwealth Games is looking at to open up for them. The IOC has some pretty strict requirements currently for the number of countries that need to take part on a regularly for a sport to be considered an Olympic sport, which is one of the first hurdles. And off the top of my head, I think it's something like 55 countries male and 40 something countries for female. And currently the membership of the International Wa'a Federation is about 38 member federations. And some of those countries that we have as member federations at the international level are not recognized IOC countries. So of the 38 that we have, Tahiti, Hawaii, Rapa Nui, New Caledonia, that's 4 off the top of my head, are not actually countries, if that makes sense to people. And so we certainly need to increase the number of countries that are taking part regularly at World Championships at the elite level. So not just taking part in the World Club Championships, but actually taking part in the elite level. We need to increase the number of countries in order to even be considered by the IOC as a sport. That would be the first hurdle, biggest hurdle at the moment. Lost what I was going to say. I think that probably my answer part of your question, Lexi, and then we could have a whole nother Zoom meeting just about that one day.
If there's not any more questions, we might close our hui for the evening, and we'll put all the information that we have online. Before everybody hops off, we'd like to take a photo just to show people that you guys turned up tonight. This is our biggest Zoom that we've ever had, which is a bit sad when you get excited about how many people are in your Zoom.
Yeah, I feel like you're all in my lounge. I haven't had anybody in my lounge for quite some time. So how do we make everybody's faces appear?
I think I can. I'm not going to be able to take a photo with all of us. There's too many.
I can only see you.
I think if everyone turns their cameras on, I might be able to see a few more faces.
Oh, gallery view. There you go. Oh, cool. Oh, wow, this is cool. That's very awesome. Oh, there's 3 pages of people.
You guys can tell that we Zoom a lot.
I think it's Zoom is life at the moment. If you joined the meeting late, yeah, we'll put out a bit of a summary. We'll summarize all of the questions that were asked, and yeah, we're pretty stoked that you all came along tonight, and it's really nice to see you all. Especially nice to see you, Marina. We were just saying we haven't seen you for so long. Cool. Are we going to count us down, Amelia, for a smile? Or
I'm not sure how we're going to do this, but
do you just do one and then do the next one and then do the next one with 3 pages?
okay.
Okay.
Hold on a second. Let me see. I'm just going to do it on my phone just to make it easier. All right. Here we go. It's the world's longest cheese, but everybody say cheese.
Cheese.
Keep holding those cheeses. I'm just going on to the next page. And the last one. Cheese. Awesome.
Awesome. If you have any more partai and you didn't want to ask tonight, just flick it through. We'll try and answer it, and I'll get an answer for those that curly one, Kiwi, and we'll let everybody know.
I'll just close us with a karakia tonight. Ngā mihi nui kia tātou, ko hara mai ki tēnei Zui. Yeah, it's really lovely to see lots of you who we haven't seen in a long time. Hopefully we get to see you kanohi ki te kanohi soon. Kia ora tātou, me nui tātou. Oh, sorry if you hear a little screaming baby in the background there. Kia tātou katoa, te ata whai o tō tātou araki a ehu karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhina tahitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake, 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 amene. Amene, kia kite.
Amene. Kia kite. Thanks, everybody.
Ko Marie.